everyone, my name is Caitlyn, and for Women's History Month, I have a great book to read you for our story time. It is called Look Up. So let's begin. Look Up, Henrietta Leavitt, Pioneering Women Astronomer, by Robert Burleigh, illustrated by Raoul Colomb. Night after night, Henrietta sat on her front porch, gazing up at the stars. How high is the sky? She wanted to know everything about the wonderful bigness of all she saw. The more she looked up, the bigger the sky seemed to get. It seemed endless. On cloudless evenings, she found the Big Dipper, inching its slow, glittering track across the night sky. She drew an imaginary line from the Dipper's pan. See, it leads to the North Star. Sometimes she felt the stars were trying to speak, to tell her what they knew. When Henrietta was a young woman, almost all astronomy teachers and students were men. In an astronomy class, she was one of the very few women students, but Henrietta wanted to follow what she loved, wherever it took her. And most of all, she loved the sense of vast distances, light years, the distance that light can travel in 1 year, about 6 trillion miles. And many stars were light years away. Think of it, amazing. After graduating, Henrietta worked in an observatory where people studied the stars. In the observatory was a giant telescope. Even so, Henrietta seldom had a chance to gaze through it to see the stars up close. Instead, she worked in a small room alongside other women. The hours were long and the pay was only 30 cents an hour. The women who worked there were human computers. Their job was to record and measure and calculate. The women were expected to work, not think. But Henrietta had other ideas. Didn't she have a mind, and couldn't she use it? Every day she peered through a magnifying glass to measure tiny star dots on photographs of the previous night's sky. On the photographs, the star resembled little bits of dust. What could these tiny dots tell her? What were they saying? Henrietta kept studying in her spare time. She read about the lives of great astronomers. She loved to repeat to herself her favorite sky words: asteroids, comets dust, eclipse, Copernicus, and Galileo. At work, she looked and looked and looked until her eyes were blurred. When she closed her eyes, she could still see the star dots dancing across the inside of her eyelids. Day after day, there were new photographs of stars to look at. Day after day, Henrietta returned to the small, stuffy room and together with the other women workers, studied the photographs. She measured, she took notes, she looked and looked and looked. Slowly, she began to see tiny differences between the stars. She especially studied a group of stars that glowed and dimmed, and then glowed again. She even discovered some blinking stars that no one had ever discovered before. But there was still more to do. Patiently, Henrietta worked on. She recorded the number of nights it took for each blinking star to go from dim to bright, or from off to on. One day she realized something. Some very bright stars blinked more slowly than the less bright stars. What could this mean? She began to keep careful charts. Suddenly, Henrietta saw a pattern. A slow blink time means that a star contained lots of light power or brightness. And if the blink time was even slower, the star contained even more light. By measuring the time it took for a star to go from off to on, One could tell the true brightness of any blinking star in the sky, even if it was just a faint speck far, far away. The head astronomer at the observatory was amazed. When astronomers know the true brightness of a star, it helps them figure out how far the star is away from Earth. Henrietta was onto something, a breakthrough. Yes, I am an astronomer. Henrietta pushed her chart in the magazine. She was proving that the smallest observation, the tiniest discovery, often leads to something very important. Around this time, most people thought the Milky Way, the galaxy containing the Earth, made up a whole universe. But not anymore. Henrietta's chart helped astronomers measure distances much farther away. First, the Milky Way itself was found to stretch out farther than anyone thought. Next, astronomers discovered even more galaxies, many of them. The universe was far more vast than anyone had ever dreamed. The stars had spoken to Henrietta. Still, she kept working. One winter night, walking home from the observatory, she stopped. The sky was cold and very clear. She suddenly remembered her childhood, long ago, when she had gazed up from her parents' front porch. Yes, it is the same beautiful and mysterious sky, but now it is so much bigger. Henrietta smiled. Her mind roamed. She dreamed. She whispered to herself again, how high is the sky? And that is the end of our story, Look Up. And now for a brief little history about what did Henrietta Leavitt discover. Henrietta Leavitt helped discover the first accurate method for measuring great distances in space. Before Henrietta's time, scientists thought our galaxy, the Milky Way, was all there was to the universe. We now know, with Henrietta and other scientists' help, as well as the assistance of larger telescopes, that the universe is far larger than anyone knew. How did she do it? In 1902, Edward Pickering at the Harvard College Observatory hired Henrietta Leavitt and asked her to look and compare photographs of stars, photographs taken each night at the observatory. No one had a system for doing this, so Henrietta Leavitt developed her own method. By holding up one photograph and placing it next to each other, it was possible to know a star's brightness, as well as compare any changes in its brightness over time. Some stars that Henrietta observed are called variable stars. A variable star is a star whose brightness changes from bright to dim and back again over time. Henrietta especially studied one type of variable star, the Cepheid variable. By careful observation of the Cepheids, she discovered a direct relationship between the time it took a star to go from bright to dim and how bright it actually was. Henrietta's discovery helped astronomers determine great distances of stars than they had ever been able to before. In fact, they were later able to determine the distance of some stars up to 10 million light years away. One astronomer used Henrietta's discoveries to measure the size of the Milky Way. Another used her work to make a better estimate of the age of the universe. So that is our book for Henrietta Leavitt, Look Up, for our Women's History Month. Thanks for watching.